The New York Jets have made a splash again. They went out and traded for Davante Adams earlier this week, the 6-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro. Their latest move in a number of headline-grabbing acquisitions: Aaron Rodgers, Hassan Reddick, others. Some of those have paid off, some of those haven't. What it amounts to is a desperate Jets team taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday night. Thanks for being with us for the matchup presented by Shell Polymers alongside Dale Lally and Matt Williamson of The Drive. I'm Rob King. Thanks for being with us. And guys, before we talk about the throwback uniform and all that stuff, as long as we're on the quarterback perspective with Aaron Rodgers, looks like the Steelers might be leaning toward making a quarterback change. You know, Russell Wilson, of course, was scheduled to start the opener and then came up with a calf injury late in the week, so we don't want to jump the gun, but it does seem to be trending in that direction. Yeah,
and we'll see where it goes, and Mike Tomlin hasn't made any official announcement yet, but it was the plan coming into the season to go with Russell Wilson, and if they make that switch now, that's going back to your initial plan.
And I will say this, Matt, we've seen him all through camp before he got hurt, which was hurt, then he played, then he got hurt again. He has looked, I think, extremely sharp throwing the football.
Yeah, the three of us have been fortunate enough to see much more of him than probably our viewers. He only played a couple snaps in the preseason, but you can definitely tell a difference by the way the tempo was, the throws he makes, the professional and maturity he brings to the field on and off as well.
So I think all three of us are old enough to remember 1974.
I was one.
He's not. I don't remember it.
At least one of us was old enough to remember that. Maybe the two guys weren't quite old enough to remember that. Yes, thank you very much for pointing out who that one person would be. But the throwback uniforms, can't wait. It's going to be so much fun as we hearken back to the Steelers' first Super Bowl championship. And by the way, let me implore you, if you have not seen Steelers Story, Dawn of a Dynasty on Steelers.com, please do yourself a favor, check it out. It is phenomenal. 20 minutes you will not regret using to watch that video. Anyway.
By the way, Rob, before you get on to that, the 1974 team, after 6 games, Chuck Noll made a quarterback change.
With a 4-1-1 football team.
They were 4-1-1 football team, and he changed from Joe Gilliam to Terry Bradshaw. So this stuff does happen.
Yeah, and here we are seeing Dwight White, right, just out of the hospital, getting the safety at the first points of the game. Physical, hard-hitting game. But I think the fans, Matt, are really going to be fired up about these old-school throwback uniforms.
Absolutely, and I watched it last night. I thought it was absolutely tremendous. And what I got a real kick out of it was just how they kind of realized they arrived. There was the Dolphins and Raiders, and everyone thought that was the Super Bowl. And then, Coach Noll, addressed them in a different manner going into that game, and everybody took a lot of notice.
It was, yes. A certain coach in Oakland thought that was the two best teams playing, and Chuck Noll disagreed. Anyway, we don't want to give away any more. Go to Steelers.com and check it out. It is absolutely phenomenal. All right, let's get into the key matchups in today's game, or Sunday's game. Matt, let's start with you. Quinnen Williams against the young interior offensive line for the Steelers. We have obviously a rookie starting at right guard and Ryan McCollum starting at the center position.
Yeah, Williams is a wrecking machine. He's one of the best pure defensive tackles in this league right now, really in the prime of his career. Most of his snaps are over the left guard, but they will move him throughout the course of every game, even outside the tackles. In this one, I would expect him to be right over the backup center a lot.
Yep, he's a 2-time Pro Bowler and an All-Pro, and he can play havoc with the running game and the passing game as well, Dale. So he's a guy they really, really have to worry about blocking.
Yeah, they do, and if that's going to be an issue for them, I think, for the Steelers who do want to obviously run the football, maybe you want to get out on the edge a little bit more. The Jets a little banged up at cornerback in this game, and so, this is a team that has given up 22 10-plus yard runs this season. And have just a 13.1% stuff rate, which is 27th in the league. That means you're getting 2 yards or less on the run.
Anything at or behind the line of scrimmage is considered a stuff.
So
they're not making a lot of negative plays.
They're not getting negative plays out of that. So if they're having any issues with Quinnen Williams on the inside, I would want to get to that edge and see if you can attack them there because, again, you got some young, untested guys out there. Outside of
watch Jack Jones number 18.
There we go.
That's what he made. So Najee got to the edge, right?
Yeah.
Got to the edge in this game where you think of Najee as a between the tackles guy. His 2 long runs, a 26-yarder and the 36-yarder, were both on the edge. He's coming off his best game, 8 straight games, I believe, with 70-plus scrimmage yards. So he has been a factor, and getting to the edge has been tremendous. Also, not being stuffed is tremendous for him. Get ahead of steam. And I'm kind of shocked by those numbers for the Jets, because when you think of Quincy Williams and C.J. Mosley, these guys are two guys that can really run. You wouldn't think getting to the edge would be a problem, but evidently it has been.
Well, also their edge defenders are a little lighter too. They're not real base 4-3 type ends. You know, Dale mentioned the corners too. They can make business decisions with tackling.
Yes.
They're better coverage guys.
Yes.
That's a nice way of putting it. Right, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. We not see DJ Reed, Sauce Gardner, outstanding cover guy. We know that, and that's obviously going to be a huge matchup. But going with what you're saying here with the light pass rushers, Will McDonald is one of those guys.
Yeah.
Earlier this year, and that's my key matchup, Will McDonald against Broderick Jones. He is a lighter guy, 235 pounds, 6'4", very slight of build.
He's a speedball.
But he is 7 sacks this year. Mike Tomlin was talking about him. He said he and Nick Herbig were his two favorite guys, pass rushers in the draft last year coming into the NFL. And McDonald, now with the injury to Johnson in front of him, a Pro Bowler performer himself, has gotten more and more snaps. He is a lighter guy. In the passing game, that should help him. The running game, hopefully that means Broderick Jones will be able to steamroll him. But in the passing game, he is definitely a guy who's a factor with those 7 sacks.
Yeah, as you mentioned, you know, we all know what Nick Herbig can do and what he's done when he's gotten in there. Well, they're very similar players, you know, with the exception that, you know, McDonald's got a little better length than Nick Herbig. But as you mentioned, Rob, Mike Tomlin said these were his two favorite pass rushers to watch in that draft, or two favorite pass rushers, period, in the draft 2 years ago. And this guy's living up to that. He's a good player.
And speaking of that draft, I mean, the Steelers jumped the Jets to go get Broderick Jones with fear that, you know, maybe he'd end up in New York. Jets got McDonald, and now they're squaring off against each other.
Yeah,
you know?
That's a fun matchup.
Yeah,
great little tidbit there as well. All right, now it's time for Yin's Chat. You can answer trivia and predictive questions with our Yin's Chat challenge all season long. Compete against Steelers Nation for a chance to win a football autograph by Najee Harris. Remember to play every week for a chance to win the season-long grand prize. It is the Steelers defense against Aaron Rodgers and the star-studded Jets offense when the matchup presented by Shell Polymers resumes.
Our fans are here. Give them something to cheer about today.
And the party is on at Acrisure. Oh my, absolutely phenomenal. Interception on the pitch to the goal line. Touchdown Pittsburgh. That's just sensational. I can't even believe that I just saw what I saw. And he's sacked by T.J. Watt. You have to be here.
Welcome back to the matchup presented by Shell Polymers. The 4-2 Steelers playing host to the 2-4 New York Jets. Of course, the New York Jets were a trendy pick for a lot of people to win the Super Bowl this year. Instead, guys, they face a very, very precarious situation. They clearly, Matt, do not want to drop to 2-5 on the season. They went out and got Davante Adams. They've pushed all their chips, everything into the table. The bank account, the deed to the ranch, the wallet, everyth's in the middle of the table here.
Former head coach.
Exactly.
The former head coach is thrown in there as well.
Hudson Bay.
So
That is really true. This is a huge game for the Jets.
it is, and this goes back to last offseason going to get Rodgers. I mean, they have the longest playoff drought in the league by a wide stretch, 13 years. And I just get the feeling ownership saying, we'll do whatever it takes to get to the postseason and hopefully further. They have a lot of older dudes, but they also have a lot of guys that have had a lot of success in this league. Aaron Rodgers is a perfect example. They have more former first-round picks on this roster than any team in the league, and they've lost 3 in a row, you know,
Right.
and made a coaching change. They were in London 2 weeks ago. I mean, a lot of crazy stuff has happened around this organization of late.
For sure.
Yeah, you know, this is a situation where they made the trade for Davante Adams, and that day, it happened to be Tuesday with the owners' meetings were down in Atlanta, and of course, the owner, Woody Johnson, was asked about it, and to your point, he said, hey, we're going to kick you-know-what the rest of the season. So when the owner's saying that publicly, you better kick you-know-what the rest of the season.
Absolutely, for sure. So let's dive into the key matchups for this game. I'm going to start with getting pressure on Aaron Rodgers, and I think that pressure could very well come up the middle. This is a guy who likes to throw quickly. He likes to throw in rhythm. He's used to Davante Adams, so I don't think that's going to be any problem getting the ball out quickly. He's got very, very talented wide receivers, which we can get to in a little bit. But I just think when I look at the interior of that Jets offensive line, and when I think about, Hayward, and I think about Keanu Benton, I'm looking at a quarterback who's 26th in quarterback rating because he's throwing more interceptions than he has in quite some time. I believe that pressure needs to come up the middle and can come up the middle.
Yeah, I think, Rob, you're right. And Rodgers, much like many older quarterbacks now that he's 40 and he's coming off a major injury last year, doesn't move like he used to. He used to be an outstanding mover, just not only in the pocket, but the escapability. And, if it's 3rd and 6, he'd get you 7 every time, just break your back. He doesn't do that anymore. And he kind of looks like a guy who doesn't necessarily like to get hit. And he got hit quite a bit last week against the Bills.
I also like Highsmith going against Smith on the left side. Smith, according to Pro Football Focus, and again, everybody's got different stats for all this, but he's given up 5 sacks this year.
Yeah, he's a perfect example of what I was talking about earlier. Is I think he'll end up in the Hall of Fame someday. He's had a tremendous career.
Yep.
But some of these guys are hitting an age wall, and have to adapt their game a little bit. Like Dale mentioned with Rodgers, I don't think he loves getting hit quite as much as he used to. Doesn't get up quite as quick. Probably hurts a little bit more the day after. And he's taken some big shots the last couple weeks.
Yeah, that's called being 40.
Right.
That's just part and parcel of it. Okay, so let's get to your key matchup. And I sort of made mention of it, but you talk about the cornerback position against the wide receivers. I mean, man, when you talk about 2 top flight receivers, that's going to be a headache for any team, and the Steelers get the first shot at it.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how they choose to defend this, because Garrett Wilson leads the NFL in targets this season. He's got 41 catches coming into this game, but now you add Davante Adams to that as well. If it were just Garrett Wilson, maybe you'd have Joey Porter Jr. go match up on Garrett Wilson and have him travel with him. Now the question is, do the Steelers treat Davante Adams as that number 1? Because, hey, he's Aaron's guy. And so to me, I think that's a better physical matchup, putting Porter on him, and then having Dante Jackson go with Garrett Wilson.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah,
there's a lot of there are a lot of each, and they don't. Ty Conklin isn't known as a great pass catching tight end, but Matt, that brings us to your key. Breece Hall is one. I mean, looking at tape last night of them playing, I think it was Tennessee. He caught a ball 20 yards downfield in the end zone like a wide receiver. This guy he can run routes like a wide receiver. He can get to the edge with his speed. He can run between the tackles. And with the corners being stressed on the outside, you would think those inside linebackers, maybe Patrick Queen, Peyton Wilson, these guys are going to have their hands full with Breece Hall.
No doubt. I now think it's the best group of skill position players in the whole league after adding Adams. Hall, as fantasy folks know, has not been putting up great numbers until last week, which I don't think is a coincidence. They made a coaching change. It was Jeff Albrecht's first ever game as a head coach. Happened to be Mike Tomlin's 299th, by the way. But there's also an offensive coordinator change, and we saw a lot more shifts, motion, play action, but we also saw we're getting the ball to Hall. I think that's the foundation, and I think that's a big thing with the coaching change.
118 rushing yards, the most rushing yards that he's had all year. 56 receiving yards, the most receiving yards he's had all year. So I think it's safe to say that they're going to try to feature him to some extent. And meanwhile, Patrick Queen, Mike Tomlin was asked about him in the press conference, says he loves the trajectory, thinks he's just getting better and better, more and more comfortable. And that speed, I thought the speed of the inside linebacker position with all 3 guys is pretty evident in this last game.
Yeah, it really was. And they're making the sideline to sideline plays now. They're going to have to do that in this game. And the other key thing with Queen is he's the communicator with the sideline. And so if they're going to mix coverages up and things of that nature, mix blitzes up against a guy like Aaron Rodgers, that focal point, Queen, has to be very good in this game, making sure everybody's on the same page. Because if you're not on the same page against Aaron Rodgers, and you got guys running free, he's not going to miss them.
Right, and that's something that they've emphasized, the fact that Mike Tomlin, again, talked about that on Tuesday. You cannot just sit in the same defense, or eventually he will pick you apart. It's going to be a fun matchup. Coming up on Sunday night, the 4-2 Steelers playing host to the 2-4 New York Jets. Kickoff time is scheduled for 8:20. For Dale Lally, Matt Williams, and our entire Steelers production crew, I'm Rob King. Thanks for watching this edition of The Matchup, presented by Shell Polymers.